Good afternoon. Welcome to Reframe Cancer's webinar. This one focuses on supporting hidden carers. We'll be today discussing how cancer carers are impacted in the workplace, how we might be able to help them, and hopefully some practical strategies along the way. So I'm just going to introduce a colleague with me today, Sarah Chalice, who has a lot of experience in this field, is with us as our expert guide to take us through cancer carers in the workplace. Sarah, if I could just hand over to you just to give us a couple of minutes of yourself and your background and the kind of work you do in this space, just to give a sense of how this all works for you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sean. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. So I'm Sarah Chalice. I always say this, run through. I'm the award-winning author of Who Cares? How to Care for Yourself Whilst Caring for a Loved One, because most of us don't. And I didn't either when I was caring for my husband for many years who had cancer. So sadly, Neil passed away. It's this year actually, but over the best part of 5 years, I now give talks for local and national charities and for corporates and companies supporting carers in the workplace, which has been really useful, and for government as well. I want to see changes and a raise of value in carers and in caring, because it's not really valued as it could be. I'm also the carer representative on the Health and Wellbeing Board in Richmond. There's over 140 health and wellbeing boards across the UK. We need a carer representative on all of those to make sure we are seen and heard, because 2 in 3 of us will be a carer at some point in our life. So as you can imagine, I'm quite busy being out there in the world and really bigging up carers and ways to support them. So I'm really delighted to be here with you today. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for that introduction. You mentioned that your personal story, which we'll touch on later, your lived experience, and I think that'll hopefully give everybody, particularly in the workplace, a sense of how to do it and perhaps how not to do it, but we'll tackle that a bit later on in this session. So in this 30 minutes, we're going to try and cram a few things in. Who and what is a carer, the impact that care responsibilities have on the individual and how that in fact impacts on the workplace and their workplace performance. We'll look at briefly the workplace legal rights and the kind of things that I'm sure the audience is very aware of, but worthy of reminding. How to spot signs, a personal experience, as mentioned, Sarah, you will give us a view on that, and hopefully some practical strategies at the end of this, which perhaps you can take away and use a few. Maybe it'll just stimulate some thoughts and discussions back within your organisation, which might help people who are affected by the responsibility of caring for somebody with cancer. So let's just move on to the next one. We've tried, I suppose, to give a definition of what a cancer carer might be and what kind of responsibilities they might have. Of course, this is far-reaching and very individualised and personalised. But really, a carer is someone who provides unpaid care typically, and they support a family member, a friend, a neighbour. The support they might give to an individual could be anybody, but typically somebody close to them. And those individuals need some sort of support. And that could be something as simple as emotional support, or it could be much more practical, could be financial. So the actual landscape of caring is very broad, as you can imagine. I'm sure many of you have been impacted by that in some way or the other in terms of the people watching here today. So it's just a sense of the scope and the breadth of caring that we're trying to give you some advice and support on here today. So Sarah, you've been through this, lots of responsibilities, lots of considerations when caring for somebody, particularly someone that's very close to you. Can you give us a feel of what happens when you start caring for somebody, particularly in the beginning and as they go through that process? Can you give a sense of that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. This slide really gives you a feeling, because we're all so busy, aren't we? You're busy. Life is hectic these days. We already have so many commitments already, and I'm sure you do too. And caring can just suddenly happen overnight. So first off, just imagining your life and how things are. You've got work, of course, and hopefully you've also got family, that everybody has her family, and also there'll be other commitments that are happening at present that we can't list. There'll be all sorts of things going on in somebody's life, and then bang, suddenly caring can happen. And it did happen overnight for me as well. It's such a shock. 1 minute everything's okay, the next minute it's firefighting, trying to deal with things. And just click the next one, thank you. And so, as Sean said, every carer's role is unique, along with the person that they care for. It can be a whole range of things that can happen for somebody. And this is going to be a small list that I'm going to give here, but the list is going to be endless for whoever it is, and it's very personalized to the person. Doctors, GPs, specialists, all sorts, second and third opinions, social services, form filling. There's a lot of form filling for carers. Maybe they're using paid carers, professional carers. I had to use that as well. So suddenly I'm managing staff in the house as well. It's not something I'm used to. Finances is very expensive to fall ill. And for the carer as well, it's even more expensive, I would say, when I think about what I went through. And of course, as Sean said, about emotional support, emotional, mental, physical support. There's a whole range of things that you're dealing with, even support for other family. I remember with Neil's mum, she was elderly. She wasn't very good with her health anyway. So I knew what to say and not to say to her. So you have to have that kind of emotional intelligence involved with that, as well as plate spinning, physical support there. I did my back in a number of times caring for Neil, moving and handling, and then fighting their corner. I had to really fight for Neil for some of the things that I needed. I'm really shocked when I think over the years what I had to deal with, and everybody is depending on you, and they certainly were doing with me. And I feel like there's this huge weight of caring on so many levels. It's quite a shock actually, and not surprising how many carers end up then falling ill due to that. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, and that's really relevant when we look at the next part here, which is the impact of cancer carers in the workplace. To follow on what you just described there, Sarah, we did some recent research and we researched 500 people who were caring for somebody with cancer, someone close to them. And I'm not going to go through this in lots of detail, but what was really clear to us through the research and the feedback we got was that on average, carers have been looking after somebody for 12 months. So it's a long-term support requirement in many cases. They're looking after people for 69 hours per month as well, typically, and the types of tasks they're required to do are really wide-ranging. Everything from physical care, emotional support, household tasks, going along to appointments and helping people understand the kind of feedback they're getting from medical professionals. So that results, we find, in quite a lot of absence, typically 6.5 days per month, somebody is absent from work. And that could be a combination of sick leave, it could be a combination of paid for approved leave, it could be that there's an allowance that the organisation is giving to that individual to allow them to look after that loved one. And equally, it's costly, £400 plus a month, excluding any loss of earnings to support that individual. That could be anything from a particular diet or healthcare or payment for other things. And inevitably, there is an impact on work because of that. And if you look at it from a global sense, we are estimating over 1.1 million people are actually working and caring for somebody close to them. So it has a massive impact, as described by Sarah, in a personal, emotional and physical way, but equally this impact on the workplace as well, and the ability to continue to work in the way that they perhaps were known beforehand. Of course, you guys will know this, the people watching this today from the HR professionals perhaps, and benefits, that there's a number of considerations for an individual who may be caring for somebody whilst working. There's obviously the Carers Leave Act, flexible working requirements, some time off for emergencies, and obviously protecting from discrimination, which is quite important in that respect. What I'm trying to do here is just give a sense of the kind of considerations you might have when considering people who are working and have a known relationship with somebody that they're caring for. So just moving on to the next one. Oh, actually, next one here is one for you, Sarah. It's a question to kick things off in terms of how the organisation should try best to spot individuals who might be caring for somebody. What is it, do you think, that they should be looking out for, the kind of signs they should be spotting to help identify this individual need extra care, extra support?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, there's can be all sorts of ways. I was a working carer till I gave up work eventually to care full time, but it can be signs of people being late for work or having to leave early or having to leave for certain appointments to be there in the hospital with their loved one, which is something I had to do as well. And their minds might not be quite there with their work. Their work might not be quite so good. They may seem distant. They may feel stressed. Anticipatory grief is a very real thing. I certainly experienced that, especially if a loved one may have limited time. You're going through a whole range of emotions and things that are going on. I know this with me as well. I wasn't myself. I was quite disheveled at times looking at me, and I wasn't quite myself. I lost a bit of weight as well. So you might notice that somebody's not quite their normal self, and it can take statistically up to 2 years for somebody to realize that they are a carer, but by that time they are in overwhelm. They are physically and mentally exhausted, as I was as well. Often we're putting on that brave face. We all do it, don't we? We suppress our emotions if you're going through something and you're struggling. But I certainly do. Carers are really a dab hand at suppressing their emotions, but actually to the detriment to their own health, because for me, I ended up falling ill, as up to 70% of carers can do, when that continued stress and pressure of trying to be there for work and for their loved ones. A carer's guilt is a very big thing as well. I felt guilty. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I trying to be there for work, trying to be at home. I'm trying to people please, being there for everybody else. The last person a carer thinks about is themselves. And I've even seen caregivers burn out. I talk about this in a lot more detail, but here I can't because of shortage of time. I've seen a caregiver have that caregiver's burnout, be on the floor, and not once did they think about themselves. It was quite shocking. And I know I was like that as well. Oh, don't worry about me, I'm okay. We brush it off because we don't want to go there. It's almost like this can of worms that to start to really focus on yourself and go, well, what do you need? What do you need right now? Maybe it's just a bit of break, a bit of to just allow yourself to just have some time. But usually for carers, we're just firefighting all the time, being there for work, being there for the loved one and making sure they survive the prognosis, etc. So there's a lot involved, and also, like I say, anticipatory grief as well. So there'll be a lot going on in their mind, and it will be affecting them mentally, emotionally, and even physically.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. That's all good points. We mentioned at the top of this session that you have personal experience, personal lived experience. You mentioned Neil. Could you share with us the experience that you had, particularly in respect to the workplace when you
Yes.
were going through this? I know it's personal to you, but equally, I think it gives a real sense of the challenges you face, almost the good, the bad, and the ugly of caring whilst in the workplace, trying to manage the care that you need to give at home, but equally also trying to manage a job and keep that under control. Would you mind sharing with us your story?
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Thank you. I know that you really want to focus on the workplace, and I'll share a bit more, but actually, I'd only been seeing Neil for 6 weeks when he fell ill with a malignant brain tumor. And as carers do, anybody in the workplace as well who suddenly has a loved one who's poorly, you just say, I'm there for you to just get better, not realizing what that would mean for me, and as your unpaid carers in the workplace, what that will mean for them. And I ended up caring for 13 years for a husband with a brain tumor. It may not have been in my head, but it certainly affected area of my life. And I think that's what people, even family, don't really understand what you're going through. And maybe line managers may have a lack of empathy as well. We're all very different. Not everybody has that empathy. So I soldiered on. So I was being there for Neil, more as emotional support, as Sean talked about earlier, emotional, but then it became more physical as Neil became more disabled from having about 4 tumors in his head, ending up having a wheelchair. Now, at the time, I was going to the hospital with Neil every Tuesday, once a week. I wanted to be at the doctor's with him, with the oncologist, which I'm sure, you know, your unpaid carers would want to as well, because 2 heads are better than 1. And the thing is, if you're the one who's fallen ill, you're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights when you're in with the doctor for 5 minutes and think, oh, I forgot to ask this or that. If I was in there with Neil, then I ask a lot of questions. So I would be coming into work on a Tuesday, then feel guilty. I'd be leaving. I'd always be rushing. It was stressful, the whole process. Then I'd get to the hospital, be with Neil, and then make my way back, and then catching up on my work, and I felt horribly guilty leaving while everybody sat there working away, even though I was being there for a terminally ill husband basically in the end. And then my line manager at the time and head of HR were really great. Now, we know about working from home now, don't we? Because of the pandemic and everything that happened with lockdown. But back then it wasn't really seen. But they said, you know what? You're very welcome to work from home on the Tuesday, or just make life easier. And then you can log in from home and work. And I said, you know what? That's such a relief. And they really understood and they supported me, which was amazing. And they retained me for a lot more years because of that. I certainly feel that. So then I logged in at home. So that was really great. Still, I felt very stressed at times. I remember during that time of trying to be there for everyone else but myself, I had 4 twitches in my face. Can you imagine the stress I must have been going through? I was bottling it up. And probably about a year later, I'm still taking Neil for chemo and working from home. The HR lady had changed, and now there was a very different woman in place of, her name was Vicky. And she didn't seem to have the empathy and the emotional intelligence as compared to Liz, who had been prior. Anyway, one day, Vicky pulled me into her office, and she said, "Oh, I see that you have Tuesdays off." I chuckled. I said, "No, not really." I said, "Actually, get up even earlier because we need to be there for the bloods. And then I'm there with Neil. But then when I get home, I log on." I said, "I work later." And this was her, this is exactly what she said. "If you want this, everybody else is going to want it." It's exactly what she said. And my reply was very different. I said, "You know what? With her and with her behavior towards me," I said, "I don't think anybody's going to want this, a husband with brain cancer." She said, "You know what? You have a choice. You can either have your wages docked or, you know, you have to come in." I said, "I can't. Neil's become more disabled. I can't just leave him to try and get to the hospital. It's just not going to happen." But at least she gave me that chance to be able to still be there with Neil at the hospital on the Tuesday. So that's what happened. And I didn't work on the Tuesdays, and I had worked basically a 4-day week, but still trying to catch up as well. As that went on, I did feel that lack of support. And in the end, I left. And I left work full-time to care for Neil because I knew that he had limited time. I wanted quality time with him, but I didn't feel I was getting the support that I needed at work. So that's why I ended up resigning from work in London and caring full-time. Now, something else I do want to share with you as well. I fell ill a number of times whilst caring for Neil over those years, and I'm an upbeat, positive person. I was juicing and running. Caring can get the best of us, and it got the better of me. And I fell ill. I couldn't actually carry on caring for Neil. He went in for emergency respite in the end. He ended up having a stroke, and he ended up in a hospital bed in our living room, unable to speak, with a PEG feeding tube. So my larger than life husband, who'd been really fit and well, was reduced to not much more than a body in a bed. And it was a tragedy for both of us. For as Neil was slowly losing his life, as a carer, I felt like I was losing mine. But you get on with it. That's what we did. So in the end, I ended up on a silent retreat. Neil went in for emergency respite, and I got better. And that's when I started to realize I've got to make changes if I want to survive this. And that's when I started to write Who Cares? But about a month or two later after that, I discovered 2 ladies, people I really know well. They'd been caring for years. Their loved one had finally passed, and only weeks after their loved one had passed, they were diagnosed with long-term health conditions. And I know of more as well. So this is a real sticking point, and that's why I give my talks, because if we're not supporting the carer and the carers are not looking after themselves, there's a greater effect that may happen years on where the carer will end up long-term sick themselves. One of my friends, she's in a wheelchair only 8 weeks after her husband died. But the bigger picture is quite shocking. It's awful. And it doesn't take much to make a big difference in a carer's life. I know we're going to come on to, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah. So very much working and caring is a challenge. It's an obvious thing to say. And a supportive workplace, as much as they're able, of course, some organisations more so than others, based on size or attitude towards these kind of benefits, is really important, isn't it? To be able to talk openly, be able to coordinate care in a way that doesn't impact too much on an organisation, but fundamentally still supports that individual in their own way. is key to managing this process. Would that be right? Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to do a lot to make a big difference, actually, to realise that care is supported and allowing them to have what they need for however long. There might not be a carer for long. It might be a couple of months or 6 months or something like that, and then things move on. But retaining your workforce is so important. And my company could have retained me, actually, I think, if there'd been better support in the end, most definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that personal story. It's obviously very close to you, and you met some challenges along the way. But it's good to hear the kind of personal experiences that you've had, so that maybe all of us can learn a little bit from that and work out how best we support colleagues, friends, family members, or even in the workplace. Let's think about some practical things that we can help people with. So just picking up on some points here, if you would, Sarah. What kind of practical strategies would you be advising your customers and organisations to consider when giving really useful fundamental support to their staff? There's a few here. I'm sure you'll have others, or perhaps you can build on a few here. But what kind of advice would you be giving organisations when supporting individuals who are caring for somebody with cancer?
Yeah, I think even I know that there can be intranets and things like that. Maybe actually putting it out there. Are you an unpaid carer? Do you know what an unpaid carer is? There's a lot of people in the UK, for example, don't realise that they are actually in a caring role. That's a really big one, because there'll be millions out there who don't see themselves as a carer, and they are in a caring role. So I think educating, making those aware within the workplace with a newsletter or even a little talk or anything like that, things like I do as well. And then regular check-ins. If you do know somebody who's caring for a loved one, ask them, how are they? But really mean it. It's not like, hey, how you doing? It's not that. It's really waiting for that little bit of time, maybe just you and them alone, or when not lots of other people around, say, hey, how are you? Giving them that space to be able to talk about it. Not everybody is going to want to actually talk about what's going on at home. There's times when I give talks where nobody's got their camera on. It's obviously the culture within the workplace that they don't particularly want to talk about. I want to call it the dirty laundry, what's going, they want to keep that as a closed door. And I even talked to somebody who's in a carer network at the moment. She's saying, I never really wanted to talk about it at work. And it's a bit like that, the taboo of mental health, and it's just being open and saying it's okay. I just happen to be in a caring role at present, and allowing them to talk about it safely and having that effective communication back and forth, having that dialogue, so that suddenly if the unpaid carer needs to have time off or away, it doesn't just suddenly come out of the blue. So it allows you to then work out if something may need to happen or shift. And also empathy. I talked about the two different HR women having that empathy. Not everybody has emotional intelligence. I think we all know people who are a little bit more sympathetic to your cause than others. It's just allowing that safe space and having that softness and that understanding, and knowing that you can't help them and do everything if somebody's going through something quite tragic. And reviewing policies as well on how to support carers. I know with some companies that I've given talks for that there's 5 days unpaid leave that's gone through with the government. Now I know some companies that do pay that, and they have big carer networks. Now they're big corporates, but I think most it will be unpaid. But it's quite interesting noticing that with different companies and the value of carers and how they are best supported. And like I said before, you don't need to do a lot to make a big difference, to make somebody feel that they are seen and they are heard. Carers often don't feel they are seen and heard. They're behind closed doors. They often feel isolated, even when they're working as well. You feel quite lonely getting on with it alone, which is certainly how I felt at times.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. We have a question which is similar, actually, Sarah. I'll read it verbatim. We have a member of staff who is a carer to their husband. Sadly, is now moving into palliative care. How can we reassure our staff member that we are there for them and show compassion without intruding? What practical help can we provide other than reasonable time off? Anything to add based on what you've said already?
Yeah, it's awful palliative care that husband, and it's awful when that happens, so my heart goes out to them. It is having that safe space, keep talking to them and just saying, hey, we're here for you. if you need to talk to us about anything, or just that regular dialogue of checking in. Also ask them, are they registered with Carers UK, like their local and national charities? I found that a great support for me. So their local carers centre, definitely. Sometimes you get massages and things, as well as counselling. I ended up having counselling at my local carers centre as well. It was really beneficial. So do ask them, are they registered with their local carers centre and with someone like Carers UK? I love Carers UK. I partner up with them quite a bit over the last few years, and they will have all sorts of advice and information on there. And they also have things like Zoom calls as well. So it's like a Care for a Cuppa, I think it's called. And I sometimes do, I've given talks in the share and learn section for Carers UK. I find that's been really, so they get that services from and support from different areas, so that they're making sure they have what they need. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's always lots of different things. There's more and more services out there, but often carers don't realise what is out there. And I always say to carers, put the feelers out, because there's a wealth of all sorts of services. And of course, a lot of it's on Zoom as well, which is really beneficial, because our carers often have struggled to get out and to be somewhere else physical. And of course, if you're working as well, you're at work and then you're at home with your loved one. There is no space for anything else. So yeah, making sure that they do connect in with all other and social services as well, if they haven't. And if they've not had that carers assessment, please make sure they have a carers assessment. Usually your local carer centre or social services can provide that.
Thank you. Good advice on that particular question. We're running out of time, as we always do. Just to talk briefly about, if you've been touched by any of the subject matter that we've been going through today, and you need any personal emotional support, we have a team of nurses. We're very happy to help you with that. There's the number there. You can email us or call us up. We can help you through that, because we do realise that these kind of conversations trigger lots of feelings in people. So if you do need support, please reach out. If you need business support to help you organise how you best support your carers with cancer, then we have a team here also to help you put strategies together, plan together, and make sure that you can provide the support that you really want to do to ensure that those individuals are getting the type of help that they need. Please reach out to us if you need that. But first of all, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we've managed to get some information over to you, raise the profile, raise the flag, if you like, for people who are looking after loved ones at home, close to them, neighbours, friends. All of this impacts on them individually, but also in the workplace too. So if you need any support on that, please reach out. But secondly, thanks, Sarah. Really appreciate your time here today. You've given us some great insights and hopefully helped a few people to understand the personal experience of caring for somebody with cancer, which is really close to your heart. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thirdly, our next webinar is on bowel cancer. It's next Tuesday. So if you'd like to join us on that one, please go online and register for that. We have a number of speakers, again, with personal experience of that, which will give a sense of how they've managed to navigate through the support requirements. But once again, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope we gave you some information to dwell on and think about, and we look forward to seeing you next time.